The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty streets of Riverstone, Wyoming territory, as a lone figure on horseback appeared on the horizon, silhouetted against the blazing orange sunrise of 1875. The townspeople paused in their daily activities, watching the approaching stranger with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Hank Zimmerman rode into town with nothing but his faithful Mustang, a weathered Colt revolver, and a reputation that traveled faster than any stagecoach. "That's him," whispered the blacksmith to the general store owner. "The man they call the stone-faced drifter. Heard he's taken down more outlaws than the law itself, but never says more than 3 words together." Hank dismounted with fluid grace that belied his 30 years, his weather-beaten face revealing nothing as he led his horse to the water trough. His eyes, a piercing blue that seemed to take in everything while giving away nothing, scanned the town methodically. 6 years riding alone through the territories had taught him that survival depended on vigilance and silence. The townsfolk gave him a wide berth as he made his way to the saloon. Stories of Hank Zimmerman had circulated throughout the Wyoming territory for years, tales of a man who'd once been full of life until tragedy stripped him of everything, including his voice. Some said he hadn't spoken a full sentence in years, communicating only through nods and the occasional necessary word. Others claimed he couldn't feel any more, that whatever happened had turned his heart to stone. Inside the saloon, he ordered with a single gesture, one finger pointed at the whiskey bottle. The bartender poured without question, sliding the glass across the polished wood. "You planning to stay long in Riverstone?" the bartender ventured. Hank responded with a slight shake of his head, his expression unchanged. "Well, if you're looking for work, old man Carson's ranch is short-handed. His daughter's been running things since he took ill." Hank gave no indication he'd heard, but he slid a coin across the counter and took his drink to a corner table with his back to the wall, a habit from years of watching his own back. Across town, Olivia Carson wiped her brow with the back of her hand, leaving a smudge of dirt across her forehead. At 27, she had taken over the daily operations of the Whispering Pines Ranch when her father's health began failing 2 years prior. Her honey-brown hair was tied back in a practical braid, and her green eyes reflected both determination and exhaustion. "Miss Carson, the fence on the north pasture is fixed," announced Theo, one of the few ranch hands who hadn't left for the promise of gold or easier work. "Thank you, Theo. Any sign of those cattle rustlers the Jenkins reported?" "No, madam, but I don't like how quiet it's been. Those men don't give up easy." Olivia nodded, concern etching lines around her eyes. The rustlers had already stolen 20 head of cattle from neighboring ranches. With her father bedridden and only 3 loyal hands remaining, the Whispering Pines was a tempting target. "We'll double the night watch," she decided. "I'll take the first shift myself. With all due respect, Miss Carson, it ain't safe. This ranch is all my father has, Theo. I won't let anyone take it from him." Her tone brooked no argument, and Theo knew better than to press the matter. As dusk fell, Olivia sat on the porch of the main house, her father's old rifle across her lap. Inside, she could hear Martha, their housekeeper, softly singing to her father as she tended to him. The melody drifted through the open window, a folk song about love found and lost that made Olivia's heart ache with a loneliness she rarely allowed herself to acknowledge. The sound of approaching hoofbeats brought her to her feet, rifle raised. A lone rider emerged from the growing darkness, his silhouette unfamiliar. "State your business," she called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The rider stopped, raising his hands slowly to show he meant no harm. In the fading light, Olivia could make out a lean, broad-shouldered man with a face shadowed by his hat. "Heard you need hands," came the reply, just 3 words spoken in a voice rough from disuse. Olivia lowered her rifle slightly. "Who sent you?" The man dismounted, keeping his distance. "Bartender. In town. You got a name?" "Hank Zimmerman." Recognition flickered in Olivia's eyes. She'd heard stories about a man called Zimmerman, a former lawman turned drifter after some terrible tragedy. The stories varied, but all agreed on one thing: he was dangerous, but fair. I can't pay much, she said cautiously. Hank nodded once, indicating it wasn't a problem. You always this talkative? She asked, a hint of challenge in her voice. For the briefest moment, something that might have been amusement crossed his face before disappearing back behind his impassive mask. Do you know anything about cattle rustlers? Olivia pressed. Some. We've had trouble. Neighboring ranches hit hard. We're likely next. Hank studied the property with a professional eye. Poor fencing. Not enough men. Easy target. His blunt assessment stung, but Olivia couldn't deny the truth of it. That's why I need help. Can you start tonight? Hank nodded again and turned to his horse, retrieving a bedroll and Winchester rifle. There's a bunkhouse over there. Olivia pointed. Food in the cookhouse. Dawn comes early around here. I'll take first watch, he said, surprising her with the longest sentence yet. Olivia hesitated, then nodded. Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. As he walked away, Olivia found herself watching him with curious eyes. There was something about the way he moved, purposeful, alert, yet carrying a weight invisible to the eye but somehow perceptible nonetheless. She wondered what had happened to make a man so closed off from the world. That night sleep eluded Olivia. She found herself at the window, watching the shadowy figure of Hank Zimmerman as he patrolled the perimeter of the ranch. There was something reassuring about his presence, despite his forbidding reputation. The next morning, Olivia found Hank in the barn, already saddling his horse. The other ranch hands kept their distance, eyeing the newcomer warily. Did you see anything last night? She asked. Tracks. 3 horses. Scouting. His words were clipped, efficient. Alarm shot through her. Where? North Ridge. They'll come back. More men. How do you know? Hank met her eyes directly for the first time. The intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. Always do. Over the next few days, Hank proved his worth around the ranch. He worked tirelessly, repairing fences, moving cattle to safer pastures, and reinforcing the barn. He spoke only when necessary, using the minimum words required, but his actions spoke volumes. The other hands began to respect his work ethic, if not warm to his presence. Olivia found herself watching him from afar, intrigued by the contradiction he presented. His hands, rough and scarred, could be surprisingly gentle when treating an injured calf. His face remained impassive, yet his eyes missed nothing. One evening, as Olivia brought coffee to the bunkhouse, she overheard the ranch hands talking. They say he used to be a Texas Ranger, Theo was saying. Until Comancheros killed his wife and child. Hasn't spoken right since. I heard it was his whole family during the war. Another voice countered. Confederate raiders. Whatever it was turned him cold as stone. Man's got no feelings left in him. You're wrong, Olivia said, entering the bunkhouse. The men jumped, embarrassed at being caught gossiping. No man works the way he does without feeling something. Later that night, Olivia found Hank sitting on the corral fence, staring at the star-filled sky. She approached slowly, not wanting to startle him. Beautiful night, she offered, settling beside him on the fence. Hank nodded, his eyes still on the stars. My mother used to say that stars are windows to heaven, Olivia continued, following his gaze upward. That our loved ones watch over us from up there. Something shifted in Hank's posture, a subtle tensing that Olivia might have missed had she not been paying such close attention. Do you believe that? She asked gently. For a long moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, so quietly she almost missed it. Used to. The simple admission felt momentous, like a door cracked open just a fraction. Olivia didn't push, sensing that even this small revelation had cost him. They sat in companionable silence until the chill of the night air sent Olivia back to the house. As she walked away, she felt Hank's eyes following her, and something warm unfurled in her chest. The next day brought a change to their routine. Olivia's father, Thomas Carson, requested to meet the new hand who had been making such improvements to the ranch. Olivia helped her father into his wheelchair and brought him out to the porch where they could watch Hank working with a young, stubborn horse in the corral. So that's Zimmerman, Thomas mused, his once robust voice now thin with illness. Heard tales about him years back, when I still made the cattle drives to Cheyenne. What kind of tales? Olivia asked, curious what her father might know. Man was a legend with the Rangers. Had a way with horses no one could match and tracking skills like an Apache scout. Then something happened, different stories depending who's telling it, but he just disappeared for years. Some thought he was dead. They watched as Hank worked patiently with the skittish colt, his movements calm and deliberate. There was no force, just a quiet persistence that gradually won the animal's trust. Man hasn't lost his touch with horses, Thomas observed. Might be worth seeing if he has other skills still intact. When Hank finally noticed them watching, he led the now calm horse to the fence. He nodded respectfully to Thomas. Mr. Carson. Zimmerman, Thomas acknowledged. Fine work with that colt. Reminds me of how you gentled that wild Mustang herd back in '62. Didn't think anyone else remembered that. A flicker of surprise crossed Hank's face. You were there? Drove cattle for the army. Watched you work those horses when no one else could get near 'em. Thomas's eyes held a knowing look. Still got that harmonica I saw you play back then? Hank's expression closed immediately, and he gave a curt shake of his head before leading the colt away. What was that about? Olivia asked her father. Thomas's eyes followed Hank's retreating figure with something like sympathy. Man used to have music in him, Livy. Could make that harmonica sing like you wouldn't believe. Stories said he'd play for his wife every evening. He sighed. Whatever happened took more than his words, took his music too. That night, a thunderstorm rolled in from the mountains. The rain pounded against the roof of the main house as Olivia made her rounds, checking windows and doors. A flash of lightning illuminated the yard, and she glimpsed Hank running from the bunkhouse to the barn, likely checking on the nervous horses. On impulse, Olivia grabbed her oilskin coat and followed. By the time she reached the barn, she was soaked despite the coat. Inside, she found Hank moving calmly among the stalls, speaking in low tones to the frightened animals. Easy now, he murmured to a particularly agitated mare. Just noise. Won't hurt you. Olivia stood transfixed. It was the most words she'd heard him string together, and his voice, though rough with disuse, had a soothing quality that seemed to calm not just the horses but something restless within her as well. You have a way with them, she said softly. Hank turned, not startled but clearly not having expected company. His shirt was damp and clung to his broad shoulders, and his usually neat hair fell across his forehead. Always did, he replied, turning back to the nervous mare. Olivia approached slowly, stopping beside him at the stall. My father said you used to play music for them. Hank's hands stilled on the mare's neck, his body tensing. For a moment, Olivia thought he might walk away, retreat back into his silence. Instead, he continued stroking the horse, his movements rhythmic. Long time ago, he finally said. Music soothes more than just horses, Olivia ventured. When he didn't respond, she continued. After my mother died, my father wouldn't touch his fiddle for 2 years. Said the music died with her. Then one day, I found him playing her favorite song. He told me he realized she'd have hated the silence more than anything. Thunder crashed overhead, making both of them jump. The mare whinnied in distress, and Hank immediately resumed his calming strokes. Sometimes, Olivia said quietly, I think we honor the dead best by living fully. Their eyes met in the lantern light, and for a brief moment, Olivia glimpsed something in Hank's gaze, a flash of pain so raw it took her breath away. Then it was gone, shuttered behind his careful mask. Should get back, he said, nodding toward the house. Storm's bad? Yes, she agreed, reluctant to end their conversation but aware she had pushed far enough for one night. Thank you for checking on them. As she turned to leave, Hank's voice stopped her. Miss Carson, She looked back. He stood tall among the horses, his expression unreadable, but his eyes somehow softer than before. Your father's right. About the silence. It wasn't much, but it felt like a gift, one small piece of himself offered voluntarily. Olivia smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached her eyes. Good night, Mr. Zimmerman. As she made her way back to the house through the rain, Olivia felt a curious lightness in her chest, as though something important had just begun. The next morning broke clear and fresh after the storm. Olivia emerged from the house to find Hank and the other hands already at work repairing a section of roof that had been damaged by the wind. She watched for a moment as Hank efficiently directed the repairs, his sparse instructions readily followed by men who had initially regarded him with suspicion. Later that day, as Olivia was checking the ledgers in her father's study, Martha came in with a concerned expression. Miss Olivia, riders coming. 5 of them, and they don't look friendly. Olivia's heart raced as she hurried to the window. Sure enough, 5 men on horseback were approaching the main house. She recognized the leader, Wade Blackwell, a local troublemaker who'd been trying to buy up struggling ranches in the area. Get father to the back bedroom, Olivia instructed Martha. And find Mr. Zimmerman. By the time Olivia stepped onto the porch, the riders had reached the yard. Blackwell, a heavy-set man with a florid face partially hidden by an unkempt beard, dismounted with a smug expression. Miss Carson, he called, removing his hat with mock politeness. Fine day after the storm. What do you want, Blackwell? Olivia asked coldly. Just being neighborly. Heard your father's condition has worsened. Thought I'd come make my offer again. $500 for the whole spread, more than fair considering the circumstances. The circumstances being that you've run off half our hands and rustled cattle from every ranch that's refused to sell to you. Olivia challenged, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Blackwell's face darkened. Careful with accusations, Miss Carson. Dangerous times for a woman alone. She's not alone. The quiet voice came from behind Olivia. Hank stepped up beside her, his stance relaxed but his eyes hard as flint. The other ranch hands appeared as well, flanking the porch with rifles at the ready. Blackwell assessed the situation, his gaze lingering on Hank. Well, well. The famous silent drifter. Heard you were in these parts. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Didn't figure you for a rancher's pet? Hank said nothing, but his hand moved slightly closer to his holstered revolver. Just so we're clear, Blackwell continued, addressing Olivia but watching Hank. No hired gun changes my offer. This land will be mine whether you sell it to me or I pick it up for taxes after your cattle mysteriously disappear. He replaced his hat. Think on it, Miss Carson. I'm not a patient man. As the riders departed, Olivia released a shaky breath. They'll be back. Hank nodded. Tonight, probably. We should alert the sheriff. A grim expression crossed Hank's face. Sheriff's new. Young. 3 men. Not enough. Then what do we do? For the first time, Hank met her eyes with something approaching warmth. We prepare. The rest of the day was spent in frantic preparation. Under Hank's direction, the ranch hands moved the cattle to the most defensible pasture, reinforced the barn doors, and positioned lookouts at strategic points. Olivia worked alongside them, her determination earning silent approval from Hank. As dusk approached, Hank found Olivia in the tack room, checking the priming on her father's old shotgun. You should stay inside, he said, leaning against the doorframe. Olivia looked up, her expression resolute. This is my ranch, Mr. Zimmerman. I won't hide while others defend it. Hank, he said after a moment. Just Hank. A small smile touched her lips. Olivia, then? They stood in silence for a moment, the air between them charged with something neither was ready to name. Did you send word to the sheriff anyway? Hank finally asked. Olivia nodded. Theo rode out this afternoon. But Blackwell's got friends in town. I'm not counting on help arriving. Smart. There was approval in his tone. Stay close tonight. If shooting starts, I know how to use this, she assured him, patting the shotgun. Not doubting. Just. He seemed to struggle with the words. Be careful. The simple phrase, spoken with such evident concern, touched Olivia deeply. You too, Hank. Night fell with agonizing slowness. The ranch was eerily quiet, every hand at their assigned post. Hank positioned himself on the porch of the main house, his Winchester across his knees. Olivia sat beside him, her shotgun ready. Tell me about your wife, she said softly, surprising herself with the boldness of the question. Hank went completely still, and for a moment Olivia thought she had destroyed the fragile connection between them. Then, so quietly she had to lean closer to hear. Sarah. Her name was Sarah. Olivia waited, not daring to push further. After what seemed an eternity, Hank continued, his voice a low rumble in the darkness. Met her in Austin. I was a ranger. She taught school. Laughed at my harmonica playing. Said I needed lessons. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Married a year when she got caught in a bank robbery. Wrong place. Olivia's heart ached for him. I'm so sorry, Hank. 5 years ago now. His hands tightened on the rifle. Couldn't save her. Couldn't speak at her funeral. Words just stopped. Impulsively, Olivia reached out, placing her hand over his. But you're speaking now. Hank looked down at their hands, then up at her face, illuminated by the soft glow from the window behind them. Something shifted in his expression, a thawing, a vulnerability that transformed his features. Before he could respond, a sharp whistle cut through the night, the signal from one of the lookouts. Hank was on his feet instantly, all softness vanishing as he scanned the darkness. They're coming, he said, his voice once again clipped and professional. Stay low. The attack came swiftly. Riders emerged from the shadows, guns blazing as they charged toward the barn. Hank's rifle cracked, dropping the lead rider. The ranch hands returned fire from their positions, creating a crossfire that confused the attackers. Olivia fired her shotgun at a rider who veered toward the house, the blast knocking him from his saddle. Pride flashed across Hank's face before he turned back to the main fight. The battle was chaotic but brief. Outmaneuvered and facing unexpected resistance, the rustlers retreated, leaving 2 of their number behind, 1 dead, 1 wounded. As the sounds of hoofbeats faded, Olivia sagged against the porch railing, the adrenaline draining from her body. Hank moved through the yard, checking on the hands and securing the wounded attacker. Anyone hurt? Olivia called. Theo took a graze. Nothing serious, reported one of the hands. Hank returned to the porch, his face grim. They'll be back. With more men. The prisoner, did he say anything? Blackwell's gathering men. Planning something bigger. Olivia's face paled. When? Tomorrow. Maybe the next day. Hank studied her face in the moonlight. You should take your father and go to town. No, Olivia said firmly. I won't be run off my land. We need to send for more help. Hank nodded reluctantly. I'll ride to the Johnson ranch at first light. They've had trouble with Blackwell too. As the adrenaline of the fight faded, Olivia suddenly became aware of a dark stain spreading across Hank's left sleeve. You're hit, she gasped, reaching for him. Hank glanced down as if noticing the wound for the first time. It's nothing. Inside. No, Olivia ordered, her tone brooking no argument. In the kitchen, Olivia worked by lamplight, carefully cutting away Hank's bloodied sleeve to reveal a bullet graze along his upper arm. As she cleaned the wound, she was acutely aware of his eyes on her face, studying her with an intensity that made her cheeks warm. You fought well, he said unexpectedly. Olivia looked up, surprised by the compliment. My father taught me, said a woman alone in the territories needed to know how to defend herself. Wise man. He'd like you, Olivia said, applying a bandage to his arm. He values actions over words. And you? Hank asked, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Olivia's hand stilled on his arm. I value both, she admitted. But I'm learning to hear what isn't said. Their eyes met, and this time there was no mistaking the warmth in Hank's gaze. Slowly, giving her time to pull away, he raised his hand to her face, his calloused thumb gently wiping away a smudge of dirt on her cheek. The moment was broken by Martha bustling into the kitchen. "Miss Olivia, your father's asking for you." He heard the shooting. Hank withdrew his hand, the mask of impassivity sliding back into place, but his eyes remained soft as Olivia excused herself to check on her father. The next morning, Hank rode out as promised to seek help from neighboring ranches. Olivia spent the day organizing the defense of the ranch, positioning the men and preparing for another attack. By evening, Hank had returned with good news. 3 neighboring ranchers were sending hands to help defend Whispering Pines. "They're tired of Blackwell's tactics," Hank explained as they walked the perimeter together. "Johnson's sending 5 men. Moore and Peterson 3 each. That gives us 14 in total," Olivia calculated. "Better odds." As they reached the old oak tree at the far corner of the property, Hank stopped, looking out over the rolling landscape painted gold by the setting sun. "Beautiful land," he observed. "It is," Olivia agreed, following his gaze. "My father came here with nothing after the war. Built everything from scratch." She turned to face him. "What will you do, Hank?" "After Blackwell is dealt with?" The question hung between them, laden with meaning neither was quite ready to acknowledge. Hank looked down at her, his expression uncharacteristically uncertain. "Haven't thought that far ahead. Not for years." "Perhaps it's time you did," Olivia suggested softly. Before he could respond, hoofbeats approached the first of their reinforcements arriving from the Johnson ranch. The moment passed, but something had changed between them, a possibility taking root. The next 2 days passed in tense preparation. The Allied ranchers arrived and integrated into the defense plan. The wounded rustler, facing jail, confirmed that Blackwell was planning a major attack with at least 15 men. On the second evening, Olivia found Hank alone by the corral, watching the sunset. She approached quietly, carrying something wrapped in a cloth. "May I join you?" Hank nodded, making room for her on the fence rail. For a while, they sat in comfortable silence, watching as the last rays of sunlight painted the horizon in shades of crimson and gold. "I have something for you," Olivia finally said, holding out the cloth-wrapped object. Hank took it with a questioning look. Unwrapping it carefully, he revealed a harmonica, old but well-maintained, the brass gleaming in the fading light. "It was my grandfather's," Olivia explained. "My father kept it, though he never played it himself." Hank stared at the instrument in his hands, his expression unreadable. "You don't have to play it," Olivia added hastily. "I just thought. Maybe someday." Hank ran his thumb across the mouthpiece, a gesture so tender it made Olivia's heart ache. "Thank you," he said simply, but the words carried weight. As darkness fell, they returned to the house, walking close enough that their hands occasionally brushed against each other. Neither pulled away. The attack came at dawn. Blackwell led a force of nearly 20 men in a frontal assault on the ranch. But Hank had anticipated their strategy, positioning their defenders to create a devastating crossfire. The battle was fierce but decisively in favor of the defenders. By mid-morning, Blackwell's forces were in retreat, leaving their leader and several others captured. As the sheriff and his deputies finally arrived to take custody of the prisoners, Olivia found Hank by the water trough, washing blood not his own from his hands. "Is it over?" she asked. Hank nodded, drying his hands on his bandana. "Blackwell will face charges. Attempted murder. Rustling. Prison for years." Relief washed over Olivia, followed quickly by a new anxiety. With the threat eliminated, Hank had no reason to stay. The thought of him leaving made her heart constrict painfully. "Your father's ranch is safe now," Hank said, looking toward the main house where Thomas Carson sat on the porch, watching the proceedings with satisfaction. "Our ranch," Olivia corrected gently. Father signed it over to me last year. He said it was time I stopped being the temporary caretaker and became the true owner. Hank studied her face. You'll do well with it. I hope so. Olivia gathered her courage. It's a lot for one person to manage alone. A flicker of something hope, perhaps, crossed Hank's face. Yes. I'll need a foreman, Olivia continued, her heart pounding. Someone who understands the land. Who can speak to the horses and work cattle. Someone who talks more? Hank asked, and to Olivia's astonishment, the corner of his mouth lifted in what was unmistakably a smile. Not necessarily, she replied, emboldened by his reaction. Though music now and then would be welcome. Hank reached into his pocket and withdrew the harmonica she had given him. He turned it over in his hands, his expression thoughtful. Haven't played in 5 years, he admitted. Perhaps it's time to try again, Olivia suggested softly. Their eyes met, and the connection between them was palpable, a bridge built of shared danger, quiet conversations, and unspoken understanding. Slowly, Hank raised the harmonica to his lips. The first notes were hesitant, rusty with disuse, but gradually a melody emerged, a gentle, wistful tune that spoke of loss and longing, but also of hope. Olivia watched, transfixed, as emotion transformed Hank's features, bringing life to eyes that had been guarded for so long. When the last notes faded, there were tears on Olivia's cheeks. Hank reached out, gently brushing them away with his thumb. Beautiful, she whispered. Sarah always said I needed practice, he said, his voice rough with emotion but no longer halting. I'd like to hear more, Olivia said. If you're willing to stay. Hank took her hand, his touch gentle but sure. I'd like that too. As the sun climbed higher in the Wyoming sky, casting its golden light over Whispering Pines Ranch, Hank Zimmerman stood beside Olivia Carson, still holding her hand. For the first time in 5 years, he felt something long dormant stirring in his chest, the quiet certainty that he had found his way home. 2 years later, the Whispering Pines Ranch flourished under their joint care. Thomas Carson lived to see his daughter marry the quiet foreman who had saved their ranch, and to hear his grandson's first cries before peacefully passing in his sleep. On summer evenings, when the day's work was done, the sound of a harmonica would drift across the ranch, songs of joy, of love, of a life reclaimed. And if anyone from Riverstone happened to pass by, they would see Hank Zimmerman on the porch, playing for his wife and son, his face no longer impassive but alive with feeling. The man they once called the stone-faced drifter had found his voice again, in music and in love, proving that even the deepest silence could be broken by the right touch.